Dr. Yenepoya Abdullah Punyi, the Chancellor, Yenepoya deemed to be University. Respected Dr. N. Vinay Hegde, Chancellor, Nitte deemed to be University, former Judge, former Lokayukta, and former Solicitor General of India. Honorable, respected guests of this Iftar get-together, wish you a warm and pleasant evening. I'm called to begin with these few words of felicitation of this Iftar get-together. Fasting is the key of certainly this Ramadan, and we fast in all the religions, one kind or the other. As we heard, that is, food and drink is primarily the things that we give up, we renounce, but there are many others one could give up to fast. What does it symbolize? Fasting symbolizes self-sacrifice, devotion, discipline, patience, self-control, generosity, and purification. Fasting has a soothing and purifying effect on the body, mind, and the spirit. And strenuous efforts are being done during this month of Ramadan, especially to work for peace and goodwill, and these sacrifices are offered for that cause. And this continuous fast for these 29 or 30 days, with extraordinary emphasis on the spiritual enlightenment through the recitation of Quran, have rectifying and purifying effect on the whole personality. Above all, fasting helps in strengthening the moral and spiritual character. Through fasting, we come to realize our personal strengths and weaknesses. We become aware about our own limitations. But I believe something beyond it happens within us. I believe thanks to fast, a person becomes very humble, simple, able to vibrate toward in his approach or her approach. One of the virtues I feel it's very paramount during this fasting is humility, humbly accepting our fragile nature in spite of all the high degrees, educational qualifications, or great honor that we have, but a person comes to realize that we are almost nothing unless God helps us. So fast is certainly connected with God. We transcend ourselves towards God. We transcend from ourselves to meet our fellow human beings, and we transcend also to go beyond our own limitations to meet our neighbor. And this humility and also the propulsion for self-transcendence is good for us. One of the things that I believe, and it is certainly true, that charity or zakat is one of the key realities of Ramadan. Feeding the people who are less fortunate, who are needy. And this fast, as it helps us to come closer to God, it also helps us to recognize the other as my own. I belong to them, they belong to me. And I also come closer to myself, appreciating myself at a higher level, receiving myself at a higher level than it was before. When I give something, the other person receives it gratefully. I consider myself as a generous person. If the other person does not receive, I cannot give, and I cannot accept myself as a generous person. Receptivity is as important as generosity that is being nurtured during these days. I also see fasting as suffering. Why suffering? Suffering because we suffer within ourselves, hunger, thirst, but also we suffer many other real limitations. When we practice this undivided attention towards God and working for the equality of brotherhood. Gratification of the need is our first control has put the fundamental physiological needs, food and drink. To sacrifice them is certainly a great suffering. However, after going through these sufferings, we rejoice, knowing this suffering produces endurance, endurance produces character, character produces hope, and hope does not put us to shame. Even the little we do for the other has an universal impact. Therefore, our suffering has a value. It brings and builds up the inner maturity, the spiritual maturity. That's the reason why the father of our nation, Mahatma Gandhi, used the fasting as a means to really show the values that he upheld, ahimsa and satyagraha, together with the fasting, to fight against all sorts of slavery, slavery within, slavery without. We ask one little question: what do I do with what I have saved by fasting? What do I do with it? To increase my bank balance? Or certainly not. We look towards the other person who has nothing, and thus we build the bonds of love. It gives us inner joy, and no one can take away that joy from us. I'm sure during this month, Muslim brethren have learned a lot of virtues. I can just point out 4 of them, like the 4 corners of the building: generosity, tolerance, perseverance, and concentration, pure concentration. Generosity, tolerance, perseverance, and pure concentration. These are virtues that make us very humane at heart. We can choose for this year one little goal. What must I do this year after fasting? Every year should have its own specific contribution. It cannot be a repetition of the past. I just put this way: let me reduce the pain of others and bring well-being to the needy. Why did I choose this? We are in the campus of health and wholeness and well-being in this Shema campus, academic campus, and also the hospital is close by. So to reduce the pain of others, psychological pain, physical pain, spiritual pain, whatever sorts of pain one goes through, and bring about well-being. One of the things that brings healing is our belief. If you know the why, you can bear with any how, says the famous psychologist, psychiatrist Viktor Frankl in his book, The Man's Search for Meaning. If you know the why, you can bear with any how, because that's the value. This suffering can be very, very useful, provided you know the why, the meaning of it. Gandhi has said, our thoughts become our words become our actions become our habits become our values, and they finally determine our destiny. The Muslim brethren believe in the holistic growth through fasting, in thoughts, that words, actions, and they later on determine our destiny, coming closer to God and closer to human beings and spiritual moral growth. Today, as a conclusion, fast should be interpreted as something beyond merely physical fasting. It should be thought of in terms of hungering and thirsting for justice, hungering and thirsting for righteousness, hungering and thirsting for breaking all the bonds of wickedness and releasing the captives, undoing the straps of yoke that is laid on the people, letting the oppressed free, breaking every yoke, to cover the nakedness of our brethren. The real fast is to bring about social justice, equitable distribution of resources of the nation. Well, these are much beyond food and drink. It thinks about the food and drink of the other person. Are we ready to walk the extra mile for the sake of my deprived neighbor? Am I ready to spare time to get the rights of those marginalized and less privileged? We must be ready to make a deeper commitment for the sake of the poor and suffering. If you know, therefore, the why of my suffering, even my food and drink, and the deprivation and renunciation, I will know I can go through any type of suffering. My dear friends, therefore, giving time and company is a greater fast, because that day we have to bear with the other person, and whether it is in Islam or Christianity or Hinduism or Jainism or any religion, certainly giving time means giving oneself, giving my totality to the other. That I struggle with the other, I open myself to the other. I become truly a person when I open myself to the other. If we are open to the whole world, to every person, if we are having a small circle of friends, just the like those who love me, then I am not. My person is a reduced person. Today, therefore, let our fast and this breaking of the fast, the Iftar, help us to go beyond to that building of the great bond of love with the whole of humanity. Thank you for listening.